Good evening, everyone. I'm Akush Lapinder. It's wonderful having you with us. BPL executives getting a verbal bruising from the public after its Sunday press conference fell flat with many of its consumers. Company officials were seeking to clear the air on the blackouts, but what they seemed to have gotten in return was an even angrier public, some of whom called into Love 97's weekly talk show Issues of the Day.
The press conference that was held by the BPL officials yesterday to the Bahamian people, it was a great insult.
That press conference was very empty. The reality is that there does not appear to have been the will.
Now, these callers stood their ground, further charging that what's going on is unacceptable and those in charge should be held accountable.
The explanations for the increase in bills when we know by their own hand our consumption is down requires more in-depth explanation, and it requires, I want some heads to roll.
And it's sad to see that the Prime Minister could be on our key shaking cowbells.
Well, the long and short of it, BPL execs hoped that with the help of the additional rental units from El Greco, the power giant would be in a position to prevent load shedding for the summer, and this being mindful of the proverbial tightrope it was walking. But Bahamas Power and Light CEO Whitney Hasty openly acknowledged yesterday that BPL did not anticipate this level of systems failure.
It must be noted that the board appointed in 2017 and this current board have had a collective stint of just over 24 months. Those two boards met the following set of circumstances in place. A decaying generation fleet with equipment up to 60 years old. A generation fleet where parts could no longer be procured or only be procured exclusively from manufacturers that have not been very responsive to our requests for help. A generation fleet where preventative maintenance was not the order of the day. A generation fleet that relied on costly fuel. A generation fleet that, if action were not taken quickly, could in fact lead us to where we are today.
Here's where the company stands.
So here's where we are. Our peak demand is 250 megawatts. We have a total of 210 megawatts available today. That 210 megawatts is made up of 105 megawatts of rental units from Greco, 35 megawatts from this facility here at Station B, in which we sit in today. Another 70 megawatts from our Blue Hill power plant. This 210 megawatts, or 40 megawatt shortfall of what is required, is what has led to the load shedding that we are currently experiencing.
BPL said to be working feverishly to return 2 generators at the Blue Hill Power Station that will make up for the shortfall. Still, the company cannot guarantee other units will not fail as it has no excess capacity. Truth be told, the frequent power outages plaguing BPL consumers only half of the problem. The other is the fact that there will be no compensation for the ongoing power disruptions. Bahamas Power and Light executives using a bit of empathy, it seems, to soften the blow. Mr. Hasty telling reporters that while they understand consumers' frustrations, BPL simply can't afford to pay out.
The challenge we have is with an aging fleet. Last night, over the course of the night, we would have had 4 additional units that would have gone down. There is no guarantee to sit here and guarantee that when those 2 units come back, that another 2 won't go down.
And according to Mr. Hasty, it's this lack of funds that has BPL in the predicament it's in today. BPL, he said, simply cannot carry out the required maintenance without proper funding. Add to that, the company can't guarantee the constant load shedding won't continue.
Our monthly expenditures exceed $40 million every month. $30 million on average is fuel. That goes to Shell North America. That's based on the price of fuel. That's nobody in the Bahamas that's getting that money. That goes to Shell North America. Over $8 million is spent on paying and running the business every day. Inclusive of that, would be the vendors that we are contracted to provide service with. Another $2 million is provided for interest on loans. I've given you three components: fuel, vendor payments, and interest. That's 40. We're not even counting the rest of the things that we're having to obligate ourselves to pay on a monthly basis. There is no room for BPL to not insist on its customers to pay.
Officials are counting on the construction of a brand new 132 megawatt power station to fix this decades-long nightmare. However, the timeline for that plant is December. Well, chalk it up to a case of "I told you so." The four words Bahamas Electrical Workers Union President Paul Maynard standing by following BPL's press conference yesterday, a briefing sparked by months on end of power outages for its tens of thousands of consumers. Mr. Maynard contending that BPL's new 132 megawatt Wärtsilä plant may really not be the answer to this long-standing issue.
We are using 120 megawatts of rental power. So if you put a new 130 megawatts in and you want to get rid of that rental power, then you got to get another stuff. Do the math. Because all you do is replacing the rental power. That's all you're doing.
He suggests BPL switches its fuel.
We are now operating on ADO. That's the most expensive fuel around. We have to go to natural gas in order to make this situation efficient. The only other option is nuclear power, and they're not going to give us nuclear power.
BPL's press conference also sparking an immediate response from the official opposition, whose leader, Philip Davis, sums up Sunday's press briefing as more of an update and status report on where the company sits with the installation of new power generators. He contends that the broader issues of political cronyism, ineptitude, mismanagement, corruption, and the lack of transparency in the general stewardship of public assets strike at the core of what many now accept is a national energy crisis.
Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. This current BPL crisis is unwittingly a Hubert Minnis construct, an orchestrated crisis simply because he failed to place the interests of the Bahamian people above his narrow, hidden, personal, and political interests and agendas.
Mr. Davis further pointed out that the promised investigations into the multiple fires leading to what he called the unplanned $95 million Wärtsilä deal have not been made public. Add to that, the deal with the Finland-based company remains mired in controversy. He also questioned why Shell North America wasn't allowed to provide immediate bridge financing as part of the $200 million energy supply deal.
I am now advised that BPL has directed Shell to abandon its own plan for procurement for generation and to engage Wärtsilä. I am now going to see how that plays out. What and who was the source of this $95 million loan? And why did its formal request not come to Parliament by way of resolution, which would have resulted in a public and transparent parliamentary debate? The government's apparent secret smoke-filled room and backdoor deal-making is not being transparent, accountable, or fiscally responsible.
The PLP leaders calling on the Prime Minister to act, and not just because of political expediency, but because it is his duty to protect the well-being and best interest of Bahamians. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.
This segment of the news was brought to you by Alive.